But let's go over to Maurice Ashley in Zagreb, who has a special guest with him.
We're with one of our dearest friends, Lennart Ootes, who is a DGT specialist, a photographer, a technical wizard. What doesn't this man do? And he is with us at every single event, making sure that everything runs smoothly. Lennart, it's funny interviewing you on the show. We've been buddies for a long time.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to be on the show and to watch the interviews from the other side of the camera, because usually I'm taking photos of the people that you interview.
Yeah, and you never get photos of me. What's up with that? You know, always ignore me.
That's the thing. Like, we're such a good friends that, like, I kind of forget that you're also part of the story sometimes.
Oh man, that's such a bogus explanation.
Yeah.
But anyway, you do take fantastic photos. What is it like being a part of high-level chess and being able to document it for the rest of history?
Well, what I really enjoy about the GCT events is like I'm part of history. You know, the events where Magnus plays is history. The last event where Magnus lost, that was in Biel last year. I was there, and that's history, because like we don't know when he will lose again, you know. And it's so cool to actually like witness all the great games from so close by, because there are not so many players or not so many people who can really watch over the shoulders of the players during their game.
Right, you're allowed to be there just about all the time, taking those photos. You even go right up next to the players to be able to take photos of them. Anybody ever get annoyed that you're taking a photo too close?
I cannot really recall that people are really annoyed. Of course, like, I have the feeling sometimes that Hikaru, he can look very angry, but I don't know if it's part of you know, his concentration, or that he actually knows that I'm there and he wants me to go away or something. And I don't really feel that from the players that they don't like me, but I get quite close and I take that privilege with some courage.
Now you see some of your great photos on screen. What is your favorite photo, or what photos do you remember? You said, I cannot believe I got this shot.
I cannot really recall a great moment, but those moments where there's a story are the ones that are the best, at least for me. If I know that like there's like an amazing game, for example by Magnus, and I can see like his hands are shaking during the game, and I can see his opponent getting grumpier and anxious, and Magnus at some point gets more relaxed, and then it gets down to like this final handshake. That's something that I really enjoy. But sometimes it's hard to judge those photos without the context. Because like I look at them later, like half a year later, and I forgot the story. And I'm like, hey, why did I actually take that photo? But like once it's like in a tournament report, I'm like, whoa, yeah, this actually captured the moment, and that's what I'm looking for.
You're also a DGT specialist, as we mentioned. Has there ever been a time when something horrible happened in the DGT boards, and you're thinking, oh my God, I got to fix this, or else then the world will not be able to watch what's going on? Well,
it doesn't happen often, fortunately, but for example, like this event, like round 2, there was something wrong with like the setup of the boards. The names were wrong with the positions, so that's something that I have to fix. Fortunately, I can do it. Well, yeah, easy without stress, but like
it's so good. It's a very rarely a problem.
It's something that I try to avoid, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely. We also know that tomorrow is your birthday. Happy birthday!
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, getting up in age now. Well, all of 31. Still a spry young chicken. You've been enjoying Zagreb. Any plans for tomorrow?
No, I have no plans. Depends also on Wesley, what his plans are, right?
This is true.
His plans are my plans.
Or Magnus as well, if he wins.
Of course.
Then we all get to party.
Yeah.
We get the day off tomorrow.
Let's see how things progress today. But no, like for example, like right now we have the Women's World Cup going on, and like if the Dutch team wins, it's already like a great birthday present for me.
Oh, congratulations! Yeah. Good luck. Hopefully that does happen. We know it is tied at halftime. Thank you so much for joining us, and keep on doing the great work.
Thank you.
Lennart,
first of all,
one of the many people behind the scenes who facilitate what we do.
Thank you,
very
Maurice.
much.